Today I'd like to share one more method of weaving a cover board in root weaving with you. I already showed you such boards while weaving the frames a few years ago. Now I'm creating a kitchen set comprised of table napkins and such containers for dry goods and herbs. I'll put a 1-liter can inside and store dry goods in it. So while weaving a cover, I've forgotten to unite an additional tube, like I did when making frames. But as they say, there was some luck in this misfortune, and I've tried a new method of integrating this board. Without a board, a cover slides, as you can see. The cover is not fastened, and thus, to my mind, the item is unfinished. That's why a board is needed for such containers. So today we are weaving a cover board. I'm going to attach a board to the last but one row. Here's the last row and here's the last but one. I adjoin 2 tubes of the base. For the first time I just lead a working tube through the coil and adjoin 2 tubes of the base. Moreover, I make some indent between the ends of 2 tubes. So adjoin the double tubes and lead a working tube either through the next loop or through the next but one loop of the second row from the edge. I fasten the first coil. The following tubes are quite manageable. Continue weaving, lifting the coils a bit. So far I was making a loop in every coil. Here the 2 coils are located very close to each other, so we can skip one. The tubes are wet, well prepared. Skip one coil again. This way I'm integrating the board through the very loops of the root woven cloth, without joining an additional tube. Because while weaving the first item of the set, I've forgotten to join an additional tube. That's why I had to find a new solution, to join a board later. So I've understood that it is even easier this way, because you can add a board to any point where you need it. You can create a straight or figured board on a square or round cover, any way you like, by lifting the loop neatly. The tubes are flexible, the ends are dried a bit, which is important for root weaving. Continue weaving this way, grabbing every or every other coil depending on how tight your weaving is, until the end of the row. I'll show you how to connect the row later. When approaching the point where I have to loop the board, I hide the start and tail of my working tube, cause there'll be too many tails to deal with anyway. And cut the tail after leading it through several coils. That's all, I've coped with the start and tail of the working tube. Now it's time to deal with the finishing tail. Well, I've decided to avoid laying one tube onto another. So I've cut off a small piece of the thickest tube I have. Let it be this one. Well, if your tubes are long enough and the cover is small, maybe one tube of the base will be sufficient for you. As for me, I'll just join the two ends. For this purpose, I'll need two small pieces. This way. Well, I believe this piece is too short, so let's cut off a longer one. If you've got several tubes, you can just join them in this point. So, continue. Finish weaving. Every weaver knows that such tiny details sound pleasant and naughty. But anyway, I like this method more than joining an additional tube. Cause weaving a row with an additional tube is associated with some difficulties as well. Adjoin the tubes of the base neatly and weave until the end of the row. These joints will get masked later by the subsequent wrapping. Sorry. Lengthen the tube. I've run out of universal polymeric adhesive, so currently I'm using school glue. It's thick and water resistant. As a rule, it's fine. But for such tiny details, universal polymeric glue is definitely better. After this, I perform wrapping of this row. One row of the board is quite sufficient for such models. That's why I've decided to loop the board end to end. In this case, when I've got only one row, it is easier this way. As for the following steps, they'll be quite simple. So I wrap the tubes of the base, fill in the gaps. Make as many coils as can fit between the loops, 2, 3 or 1. Everything goes much easier afterwards. The first row is the most complicated. I've got a masterclass on how to weave a cover. I'll attach a link to this video. Continue filling the gaps. I'll soon reach the joint of the tubes of the base and hide it. As a result, I'm getting such a neat roll. There's just a little bit left. This way. The loops are easy to move if needed. For example, if there's enough space for only 1.5 coil, you can move the loop a bit further and fit 2 coils into the current gap and 1 coil into the next gap. I mean, it's quite easy to wrap. This way. And the last coils. Here's the last coil. Prepare a space for it and place it neatly. Lead the tail behind the loop of the cover in order to hide it. The tubes have been treated very well. Well, sometimes they are even too soft to weave. That's all. I've masked the tail. It's enough to lead it through 1 or 2 coils because there'll be no large tension on the cover. I cut the tail off, hide it, and later I'll coat it with varnish. That's all, a neat board is ready. The only thing left is to varnish it. Now the cover is not going to fall. If you remember, at the beginning it was sliding all over. The kitchen set is almost ready. The containers along with table napkins will decorate our kitchen.